Hey Axe Junkies! I'm making a video that I thought you guys and girls might enjoy seeing. I'm going to play with 3 different axes, all 3 of which are frequently talked about on the Axe Junkies Facebook page. And so I thought it would be really useful and very interesting for people to get a taste for what each of these 3 axes can do. The 3 axes are shown here, sitting into this nice little log I found out in the woods. The first one we have is the Prandi. This is the vintage professional type, I believe. And here we have a Hults Bruks Atran, which is kind of their standard felling axe. And here we have a Basque Axe by Jauregui, if I'm pronouncing that right. This is the rounded bit Basque Axe, which is more versatile, better for hard woods. And we can take a step back here and look at these handles. The Prandi and the HB, the Hults Bruks, are both of American hickory, and then I'm not actually sure what the Basque Axe is made out of, but I know that it is not hickory. You'll notice a big difference in the different types in the different heads. Prandi is pretty tall, projects out pretty far, and has a pretty significant pole, not quite as big a pole perhaps as the Hults Bruk. And then of course the Basque Axe has no pole really. And then let's come around here and take a look at the edge geometry. This is very interesting, I think. The Prandi, as you'll see, gets super narrow really quick. My terminology isn't so good, I'm sure there's a description for that. Compare that to the Atran, which has a much more gradual taper. And then the Basque Axe is somewhere in the middle. Also take a moment to look at the hanging techniques. The Basque Axe slides down or up from the bottom of the handle, and so it doesn't really, kind of like a mattock, so it doesn't really come off. You'll notice that it does actually look like it's slipping off here, but that's because it's been sitting indoors all winter and the wood's gotten real dry and shrunk. This isn't coming off. You'll see when I swing it. I'm not at all worried about it coming off. And then the Hults Bruk and the Prandi are more traditionally hung. I should note the Hults Bruk was slipping off, and so I had to knock it back down onto the shoulder some more, and then drive this wedge in a little bit better. The Prandi is my newest purchase, and I haven't used it as much, so it's not nearly as worn. So. Now, this axe is 1.5 kilograms, so that's going to be just over 3 pounds, and these two are both around 3.5 pounds. So weight-wise and handle-wise, the Prandi and the Hults Bruk are kind of similar, and then of course the Basque Axe has got a smaller head and a smaller handle. The one thing that does unite these 3 axes pretty nicely is they're all about $100. You can get each one of these with $100 including shipping, although the Hults Bruks might be a little bit more with shipping included. So if you're looking for a good axe, you got $100 sitting in your pocket, burning a hole in your pocket, then watch this video and see what you think of how these 3 work in my hands, and maybe it'll help you make a decision. So we'll begin with the Prandi. Like I said, this is the newest axe. I just sharpened it with, it didn't come super sharp, so I sharpened it with a Falcon DC3 diamond stone, got it to a decent shape. I can't really get it scary sharp like some of you can, but it's a skill I'm working on. And so I'm going to hit this log here for a few strikes just to get a sense of how it bites, how quickly, how large the chips are, and then I'll work my way down the log with the other types of axes. I'm going to try really hard to make this more reliant on what the axe can do than what I can do. I'm going to focus on form, not try to speed up or overpower anything, and we're just going to see how does this axe bite into this. How do these 3 axes bite into the same piece of wood? Alright, next up is the Hults Bruks, standard felling axe, the Atran. Let's see what it can do. Last but probably not least is the Basque Axe. I don't know if I'm pronouncing Jauregui right. Jauregui, Ernietta. The Prandi is made in Italy. The Hults Bruks is made in Sweden. This is made in Spain. It's the Basque style of axe. The Basque people that live in northern Spain. Let's see what it can do. So here are the results. Not particularly scientific in that I wasn't counting how many blows I took or how long I spent. But I will say that I felt like the Prandi here was maybe the easiest to use. I think you can see that my cuts here, they're not perfectly smooth obviously, but they're relatively smooth, and it really bit into the log quite nicely. There's a nice V shape going. When we compare that to the Hults Bruks Atran, similar thing. It did a nice job, or I should say I did an okay job. But this, I should have noticed this, or mentioned this earlier. This has a 30-degree angle on its edge, whereas this has a 19 to 20, and the Basque Axe has a 20-degree angle. And so this is arguably maybe a little bit better for bucking than it is for felling, this being a bucking exercise, as we're not chopping down any trees. I would say that I probably got about as far with the same amount of time and effort as I did with a Prandi, but I think I felt that the Atran was just a little bit harder to control. There's something about the extension of this that I think I really like. It allows me, maybe, I would guess that it strikes the wood just a little bit sooner than I'm used to, and so it probably produces a little bit more power, because I'm almost I'm aiming for the center of the wood, much like a boxer is supposed to aim for the center of his opponent's head, or her opponent's head. I'm sure there's value in aiming for the center of the piece of wood, and I think this encourages that more than this does. And then finally, we have, of course, the Basque Axe. Now, I'd be tempted to say the Basque Axe probably did the same amount of work and roughly the same amount of time and effort as these other two did. I think you'll notice the smoothness is, well, it's not beautiful, it's nothing I'd brag about, but the smoothness of the cuts, at least on my power stroke instead of the back stroke, are a little bit better. I don't know if those are actual terms for what I was doing, but right hand stroke versus left hand stroke, as I'm a right-handed person. I will also say that I really like the Prandi. I really like this thick, super thick shoulder. This is also a thick shoulder, but it doesn't extend as far as this does. This is a really good shock absorber, I think. The Basque Axe, probably because it's got the shortest handle and the narrowest handle, and actually the lightest handle, it sends a lot of shock into your hands. The Prandi didn't do any, and I think that the Atran, that the Hults Bruks did somewhere in the middle. So, again, this is not a scientific study by any stretch, but I'm tempted to say that I like the Prandi best if I was going to be chopping wood all day long. And I am going to chop wood. I'm going to finish up these logs and throw them into a pile over there. And I think I'm going to use the Prandi to do it, just because it's a little bit easier to use, a little bit easier to control, less shock to the hands, and it's just a really nice tool to work with. The last thing I'll say about it is it's got a pretty thick handle, and I like that. I know a lot of axe junkies talk about thinning out their handles, and that they like thinner handles. I can say that the Basque Axe has a thinner handle. I much prefer something meatier to hold on to. The Hults Bruks is somewhere in between, closer on the thick end, I would say. Not as thick as the Prandi, but definitely not as thin as the Basque Axe. So this fairly non-standard approach gives the winner to Prandi. So those of you that might have $100 to spend and want a really nice axe, of these three, I think the Prandi is going to take good care of you. Thanks for watching.